Hi there, I'm Kevin McManus with Great Systems. How effective are your measurement systems in your organization? One of the things that bothers me the most in the organizations that I work with is their measurement systems aren't that sophisticated. In this video clip from a recent presentation that I gave, I take a look at different approaches to measurement. I appreciate you taking the time to watch it, and I hope that you'll measure up. Enjoy.
So let me give you some thoughts on measurement here. As Chris teaches in the trending class, too many organizations just count things. One of the biggest mistakes companies make is they measure effectiveness of cost and cost expenditure by looking at dollars spent this month versus the same month a year ago, or the monthly average. We don't consider the work behind the dollars. We don't look at a ratio, which is one step up. Some companies actually look at indexes. I imagine some of you have safety indexes where you look at different types of safety rates, often with near misses, across work groups or across different types of tasks. Where we're heading with big data, and it's already happening in sports, is we're creating formulas or algorithms. The one I want to create is, based on certain safeguards we're using and their effectiveness, what is our chance for error that day? Because different safeguards have different impact. A policy does not work as well as a good tailboard meeting. A tailboard meeting does not work as well as a well-designed target guard. Right? So which safeguards are in play? Which ones are more effective? And when we stack them all up, what's our potential for error? Now, here's some different scales. We don't have to get into super math here. I'm not trying to do that. Most things can be measured this way. The 3-bear scale is the simplest. It's not the most effective, but it's the simplest. Right? And by the way, who's our best source of feedback for safeguard effectiveness? If we want to know how well training works, who do we ask? The user, the customer, right? People like to ask me after these talks, how'd it go? And I say, ask my customers. I'm not the person that is there. How many of you do ask your folks at least annually how well your different safeguards work? Because that's your starting point. Ask your customers, and these are different ways to get feedback from them. This doesn't really give you enough separation between low and high. You're going to gravitate to the middle. It's going to have to be really bad to get a low, really good to get a high. It's like my sleep tracker watch drives me nuts because every morning it asks me, how was your sleep? Somewhat rested, completely rested, or not rested at all. Well, how often am I going to mark, one of the two ends? And so I almost always mark somewhat rested. So that's not a good one. So most people use the 5-point, and the 5-point is better, but what is really good on a 5-point? Is it above 3, above 4, 4.5? Okay, so some folks will debate that, and they'll say, well, let's go to 7-point. Well, that gets confusing because how do I tell the difference between a 4 and a 5 or a 6 and a 7? There are some people that say, mark out the 5, and then it's either 4 and below or 6 and 7. Don't take away that 5 option. Make a call whether it's really on this side or on this side. And that's what the companies I see down at the bottom do. I've been an examiner for the National Quality Award in the U.S. for 20 years. This is my second year of serving as a judge. And most of the good organizations I see in Baldrige use that bottom scale. And the cool thing about the bottom scale is similar to the 5-point scale, but the 3 or the middle is considered inconsistent. It is sometimes agree or disagree. And the top one, strongly agree, is where we want to be because that is your top box. That's one of the better approaches, and that's a lot easier for most people to make choices on versus trying to put a rubric or words on the numbers. So give some thought when you survey your folks, and doesn't have to be a 30-question survey or anything. Take your top 5 safeguards, your top 7 safeguards, ask them once a month or once every 3 months. Tell me how you think these work. How effective are they? And use this scale, but consider the AD, the D, and the SD to be dissatisfied. Less than adequate unless you do real simple work. And I don't think, and most of you would be here if you did real simple low-risk work, right? We're mostly here because we do have a lot of elements of high-risk work. And then see if you can improve the safeguard as much as necessary or to strongly agree for your high-risk tasks. So let's say most of us do use checklists for lockout tagout, right? How well do those checklists work? Would your users of the checklist strongly agree that those checklists are usable and effective for achieving good lockout tagout? Or would they find holes in them? Just like holes in the cheese. So give that some thought, because your users are your primary feedback source. Here's a quick test. You can do this right now. Think about the most effective pre-job meeting that your teams perform. Think about the weakest one that your teams perform. How much difference exists between the really good crew that does super tailboards and that kind of weaker crew that does very weak tailboards? If that difference is big, you got a lot of waste out there, and your potential for error is going way up. The goal here is to tighten up the variation, make it much more predictable that no matter which crew I go out and look at, no matter which process I go out and audit, I'm going to see the same thing most of the time. Steve Swarthout shared with me in the last talk that I did. He said, think about it this way. How do your people perform when the audit is announced versus how well do your people perform when you do an unannounced audit? Should you see much difference whether they know about it or whether they do know about it? To me, the announced audit is really kind of just a baseline validation. I expect my guys, when I was in the food plant, to always be audit ready. They should know their jobs well enough so that no matter who shows up and when they show up, I'm getting that same level of performance. The tailboard meeting should not improve when the big boss shows up. Right? The use of the checklist should not improve because somebody's watching me. You guys are closer to the process, so you often know reality. And if that reality is a big gap, you've got some concerns. And Dr. Deming said, really, it all has to do with reducing variation, taking out the difference between the good and the bad. Bring everyone up to the same standard that matches up with risk. It's not that hard to do. We just have to share best practices. We have to recognize that in our crews, everybody is good at something. So how can we let the person with the best practices have their moment to share with the others and help everybody learn? If the supervisor thinks they're the one that knows everything, we're not going to get there. Find the one on the team that can help everyone else raise their standards.
Hello once again. Thank you for taking the time to watch that video clip. It meant a whole lot for me to be able to bring it to you. Please connect with me on LinkedIn, and if you have any questions, visit the website at www